Hi, everybody, and thank you very much to Future Labs Live for giving me the opportunity to present to you today the Swiss approach regarding the use and exchange of health and health-related data for research purposes. My name is Katrin Kramery. I'm heading the Personalized Health Informatics Group at SIB, the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics, and we are responsible for the coordination and also partly the technical implementation of the Swiss Personalized Health Network Initiative, SPHN. So what is really the difference when we include health data into our research projects compared to, for example, data from model organisms? Health data is considered sensitive personal data, and therefore it is subject to particularly strict rules. We have stringent legal and ethical requirements ensuring the privacy of the patient, but also ensuring data security. We have to ask the patient for consent that they allow us to use their data for research projects. Every research project normally has to get ethics approval from a cantonal ethics committee in Switzerland. And the PI or the project lead has a certain responsibility and accountability regarding this data. In addition, we need compliant ICT infrastructures to handle that data. So we need to ensure a secure data transport, and we need to be able to securely store and process the data. Health data is normally distributed data, so it is collected, captured, and kept in primary systems throughout the country. So if we would like to reach large data sets for our research projects, we would have to combine data of different sources into our project. And this is a very challenging point, health data is predominantly captured for care purposes, not for research purposes. So we have to invest a lot of effort into making this data really usable for research, especially when we talk about routine data, routine health data. When we look at the different data streams for data-driven biomedical research, also called personalized health research, there are basically 4 different sources or different data types. Data from healthcare institutions. This is routine data produced in, for example, hospitals, or specific routine data. So typical phenotypical data, for example, diagnosis, medication, demographics, but also imaging data. This data is, as I said, not captured for research, it's captured for care. It is widely unstructured, so medical doctors like free text a lot, so we have lacking standardization, lacking structures, and we have only limited explanatory information to this data. There's also molecular or omics data coming from the more research settings, so genomics, for example, transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics. This is produced within the research setting. There are also not a lot of common standards used here. We miss metadata information to this data, and we also have to see that data produced in a research setting is not clinical grade, it's only research grade. Then we have clinical research data from clinical trials, for example, or longitudinal studies like cohorts or registry data. This data actually is captured for research purposes, so it has a high quality, it's patient-oriented health data. It is normally highly structured, but it is only vertically standardized, so meaning data is interoperable within one cohort or within one clinical trial, but normally we cannot combine data of different clinical trials without problems. Also, so far, there is no cross-use of routine data normally, so data is especially captured for these clinical trials or for these cohorts, so there is not much data fed in from the routine care. And therefore, clinical research is expensive, and it's a complex endeavor to collect data for these purposes. And then there is healthy citizen data. So this is citizen-owned, it's lifestyle data, it is social media data, it's wearable data or coming from devices or sensors. Here we have very often a technical lock-in situation. We do not get this data out of the apps or systems where it is captured. Normally there are no standards. We have vastly lacking technical interoperability when we want to combine this data between different systems or apps. But no matter what kind of data stream we are looking at, for including health data into research projects, there are 4 very important requirements. We have to be able to find the data first. We have to be able to access the data. The data has to be interoperable. And ideally, the data should be reusable. So these are the FAIR criteria you probably all already know about. And there are certain challenges attached to the FAIR principles. So regarding the findability, data is normally kept in silos. And because of those many silos, we have only very small numbers because if we do not combine the data, we have only the data that is available in one of those silos. We have lacking metadata descriptions, and we miss catalogs that researchers are able to browse through, for example, to see what data they could potentially include into their research projects. When it comes to the accessibility, we already have to stop at the very first point because we do not know whom to contact. There are different data governance rules for every institution that has data. So basically, the researcher has no idea because these processes are normally not very transparent. We also have a kind of a lock-in privilege. So those institutions that capture data, that store data, when researchers work in those institutions, they can normally access the data. So like in a hospital, for example. But if you are a researcher outside of this institution, you have no access rights to this data. And the willingness to really, truly share the data depends a lot on how much effort was put in combining those data sets. So if you think of a longitudinal cohort, for example, where people put in a lot of money and a lot of effort over years to collect this data and to annotate the data, to curate the data, of course, it is a very understandable problem. The willingness to share is not so high. And there are, of course, ethical and legal constraints regarding the accessibility. Interoperability is one of the major challenges. There is a large heterogeneity across data sources. We miss data standards, and that's what we experience right now in SPHN, the introduction of a formal, accessible, shared, and broadly applicable language for knowledge representation as the FAIR principle demanded is very hard work. In terms of reusability, we would need proper description. What kind of data sets are existing? What are these data sets? We also have here the legal and ethical requirements that don't go away only because we already use the data. For the reuse, you have to go again through ethical approval, for example. You have to have data transfer and use agreements with the data providing institution, for example, and so on. And in terms of reusability, we also have to think about what is the long-term storage strategy so that everybody in the research field is able or potentially would be able to reuse the data sets. To tackle the challenges just mentioned, the Swiss federal government launched the Personalized Health Network initiative in 2017. It is a research infrastructure initiative funded for overall 8 years. In the first 4 years, we focus on university hospitals, so making data usable or shareable for research from the 5 university hospitals that we have in Switzerland. In the second phase, we will consolidate the existing network, but we also will expand it to other health data providers throughout the country. We work together with a lot of partners. We gather all the important players around and stakeholders around one table for the SPHN initiative. It is a collaboration of unprecedented scale, so to say. We try to really establish a common understanding and a sustainable roadmap when it comes to the use of health data for research, also for the future. The goal of the SPHN initiative is to promote the development, implementation, and validation of coordinated infrastructures to make health data interoperable and shareable for research in Switzerland. Let me introduce to you some of the infrastructure components of SPHN. So the first infrastructure component is at the university hospitals. As I said, this is the main focus of the first phase of SPHN, to make clinical data shareable for research. And the 5 university hospitals in Switzerland are currently developing research data management systems to be able to share their data with the research setting. We also have had some bottom-up projects or calls for infrastructure establishment projects. We have several driver projects, big collaborative consortial projects with many different data providing institutions on the one side and data recipients from different institutions, also interdisciplinary on the other side, that help us basically build the infrastructure on the way and they have their driver projects, so to say, as a proof of principle on top of that. And we have infrastructure development projects. These are rather small projects that tackle specific challenges or specific problems. And after successful completion, basically the network would be able to implement the results of these smaller projects also throughout other institutions. This year, we also started to tackle the horizontal integration of other fields. So, for example, we have a task force that looks for a federated network for genomic data and also one for proteomic data. So it should be determined how to better make use of the already existing data, genomic and proteomic data that is would be potentially available for research in Switzerland, but also to streamline basically the procedures when it comes to new data generation in these fields. There's also a new task force launched this year to tackle the verification of cohort and registry data. And of course, we have to take care of data lifecycle management throughout all these different aspects. And there's also a new task force of SPHN taking care of this problem. And the Biomed IT network is basically the national infrastructure resource accessible to all researchers in Switzerland to securely transfer, store, manage, and process confidential research data on a network of secure HPC clusters. And I will introduce to you the Biomed IT network project in more detail in a second. So coming back to the FAIR principles, and let me introduce to you some examples for the SPHN approaches and solutions towards FAIR data. We are currently building a federated query system that allows researchers to run simple queries against a subset of data from all 5 university hospitals, providing reliable estimation on the availability of data and samples or patients for planned research projects. Also, we are working on metadata catalog, on the establishment of metadata catalogs in order to be able for researchers to identify routine data, research data, specific data sets, cohort data or samples for their research projects. In terms of accessing the data, we put a lot of effort in templates for legal agreements that have to be signed when health data is exchanged between data providers and data recipients. So we have templates for consortium agreements, for data transfer and use agreements, for data processing agreements. And since these agreements have to be signed by various people of various institutions that would normally take forever, we really need to streamline the processes here. We need a common understanding, and we managed now to establish the first legal agreements in collaboration with the legal departments, of course, of all of our partners, and to be able to streamline the processes here so that researchers do not have to wait for the signature of these agreements a long time. In terms of interoperability, we have the semantic interoperability framework of SPHN that ensures shared interpretability of data. This is the goal. We have the SPHN data strategy that exists of 3 pillars. In the first pillar, we want to roughly define the semantics. And in the second pillar, we need a formal descriptive language that is able to report the meaning of the data. We are looking into RDF here at the moment. And we are convinced that the data models to be used should be chosen by the researchers rather than by the data providing institutions. Of course, we have to take care of technical interoperability between these different infrastructure components. And in terms of the reuse of data, we are building a secure and protected IT environment that also hosts the repository and archives. And we're thinking about long-term storage strategies. Let's look at the data analysis part. So we want to leverage the potential of health-related data. What is necessary for this? As I already said, data needs to be interoperable. It needs to be of high quality, or we'd like to say a fit for purpose quality, because a data set can be of a very good quality for the one research purpose, but maybe not so much for another research purpose. So we want fit for purpose data. We want availability. We want the data to be available to researchers in various disciplines, of course, under controlled access, but we have to ensure that researchers from different institutions can access these data sets, ideally at the same time. We need strong capabilities in clinical bioinformatics, computational biology, and computational service infrastructures are required. Also, big data analysis and machine learning approaches require normally high performance IT infrastructure, so for compute and storage. And we need the security measures for ICT systems in place. They are necessary to protect the confidential information from unauthorized use regarding modification or loss or release of data. This is all necessary. We had very secure systems in Switzerland, for example, in the university hospitals, but they were not so much capable or usable when it comes to high compute demands for high performance compute. And of course, we have high performance compute clusters in Switzerland, but they could not handle sensitive data. So this was the idea of the Biomed IT network. With the Biomed IT network, we are currently building a secure and protected environment that provides researchers with access to a compute environment, remote access for every researcher in Switzerland. We enable researchers to securely transfer, store, manage, and process confidential research data on Biomed IT without compromising data privacy. The Biomed IT network is basically built on 3 existing scientific IT services. The one of the University of Basel, this is SciCore, the one of the ETH in Zurich, this is SIS, and the one of the SIB, the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics in Lausanne, which is Core IT. One of the major goals of Biomed IT is to lower computational boundaries for researchers, because ideally researchers should be able to focus on their research rather than on information security aspects of their systems. Biomed IT provides the entire package. So there is a tool for a secure encryption and a secure transfer of data. So the data providers can use that tool to securely encrypt and transfer the data to the next Biomed IT node. The Biomed IT nodes are building basically a form of a private Swiss cloud, so to say. They operate under one IT security policy. There is technical interoperability between the nodes, and the nodes, the data packages from the data providing institutions are basically automatically routed to the destination Biomed IT node. So it doesn't really matter where the data sits. There are isolated project spaces where the data ends up, where data packages end up for a certain project. And the researcher can remotely access the data from their institutions or from their home computer connected via VPN. Researchers log in through the Biomed IT portal and have access to this cutting edge technology, cloud computing, big data storage, high performance compute from their desk, so to say. So I would like to conclude with one sentence that we are very convinced of in SPHN. Healthcare and research must go hand in hand in the digital learning healthcare system of tomorrow. Our biggest challenges are scalability and sustainability. Obviously, we would like our network to survive the funding period of beyond the funding period of 24. Security is, of course, also a big challenge. We take security very seriously in SPHN and Biomed IT and work on making our systems even more secure in the future. And maybe one of the biggest challenges is still a cultural shift. We would like to convince people that it makes sense to share their data, to chip into the big ecosystem of health data and its use for research purposes. I would like to acknowledge my team here, the FEE team in Basel. We are working together now for 1.5 years and have made great progress together. I would like to thank you for your attention here. If you would like to learn more about SPHN, please visit our website at sphn.ch or also our group website on sib.swiss. You can always write us an email, dcc@stip.swiss, or you can follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much.